Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishnuvanusute Devi Namaste Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Page 85, Chapter 2, Text 11. Contents of the Gita summarized. This is a great chapter. The beginning of spiritual life. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sujjanana Vasuchastvam Bhagnavaram Chabasase Gatasum Nagatasum Cha Anushocham Pandita Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sujjana Vasastuchastvam Bhagnavaram Chabasase Gitasun Nagatasum Cha Nanusachanti Pandita Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sujjana Vasachastvam Bhagnavaram Chabasase Gatasum Nagatasum Cha Nanusachanti Pandita Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. Report for Srila Prabhupada. The Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, "You are talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is body and what is soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition. As it will be explained in later chapters, it will be clear that knowledge means to know matter and spirit and the controller of both." Arjuna argued that religious principles should be given more importance than politics or sociology, but he did not know that knowledge of matter, soul, and supreme is even more important than religious formulas. And because he was lacking in that knowledge, he should not have So Krishna is saying, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise and that neither for the living nor the dead. So this is Prabhupada mentions many times that he gives Arjuna a slap, a friendly slap in this conversation on the battlefield. And this is one of these slaps. So even though he's a pure devotee and an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord, he's basically calling him a fool because he's lamenting for something which is not lamentable. So this is the beginning of spiritual life. That's why it's in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. It's all about the soul. And we can read so many things in the later part of Bhagavad Gita, how to surrender, all these different things, modes of material nature. But the first and the most important point is that we're not this material body. And I was watching this one video at Chutananda. He was saying, the former Chutananda Swami, he was saying you could take any of Prabhupada's books, take four of them out of that bookcase, lay them on a table, open them up to any page, and you're going to hear the same thing. You're not this body. And almost every page you're going to find, you're not this body. Krishna is the Supreme Personality Guided. We don't belong here in this material world. We should go back to God and chant Hare Krishna. It's the same message. And I remember when I first joined the movement, it was like these two young brahmacharis, when the traveling sannyasis would come, you'd hear the same thing from these sannyasis, GBCs, the older people that actually had a lot of direct association with Prabhupada, because they were hearing this same point from Prabhupada over and over and over again. It's in every page practically of all of his books. You're not this body. So we want to see the soul. The people actually interested in spiritual life, they want to see the soul. But the soul, it's actually described in Bhagavad Gita that the soul is invisible. So when a doctor, probably gives this example, when a doctor injects some medicine into somebody's bloodstream, you don't see the medicine working, but you can tell the presence of the medicine because the person gets well. The disease condition vanishes and the person returns to some healthy state. So similar in the same way, you can detect the presence of the soul within each living being by consciousness. You can't see it, but you can detect it. So this is the first thing. So we could probably used to give an example. We say, this is my hand, this is my arm, this is my leg, this is my head. Nobody says, I hand, I arm, I leg. You say, no, this is my hand, this is my... So there's a difference between that which is seen and the person that's doing the seeing, the seer, and that which is seen. So there's a difference between the two of these. And out here in the garden, we've got so many plants, hundreds and thousands of plants, and I'll never go water a dead plant, but I'll put water on a living plant. Why? Because there's consciousness there, there's life there. Nobody's going to put water on a dead plant. It's a waste of water. So another point Prabhu makes, he says, because we can remember yesterday, everybody, every one of us, we can remember yesterday. Because we can remember yesterday, and we can see that our body has changed. That means that we are different than this body. You call it whatever you want, consciousness, soul, anti-material particle, something. Call it whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. There's something that can recognize the difference between yesterday and today and see that my body has changed. So just like when we're children, all of us, we're grown adults now. Some of us are older than others. And we can remember back when we were children how we used to jump and play and roll and do things and win sprints and do all kinds of exercises. We can't do this anymore when you get older. But you can remember it. So that remembrance, that being able to see how my body has changed means that we're not this body and the body has changed. So because we can remember that and because we can see the difference, it means we're eternal. We're different than this body. And we want to be young. Nobody wants to be old. We want to be young and we want to be eternal. But we're in this material body right now. There's a nice story in the Bhagavatam when Hiranyakasipu, actually one of the first demons that Vishnu killed was Hiranyaksha. And so Hiranyaksha is dead. Vishnu kills Hiranyaksha. His brother is Hiranyakasipu. And there's this huge gathering because he was a huge demon. Everybody in the universe was afraid of this person. And Hiranyakasipu delivers this funeral oration upon the death of his brother, Hiranyaksha. So everybody's lamenting, his brothers, his wives, his family, and Hiranyakasipu says, why are you crying? Your brother's, our brother, Hiranyaksha, is right there laying there. His head's there, his arms are there, everything's there. The bangles, the weapons, it's all the same. So go up and talk to him. You can't talk to him because he's dead, he's gone. And nobody loves a dead body, unless you're completely crazy. So Hiranyakasipu says, actually this means that we never actually saw Hiranyaksha. And if we didn't see him, it means we didn't even know who he was. All we saw was his body. So if he's just some kind of chemicals, then put some chemicals in his body and bring him back to life. The same chemicals are there in his body. There's life going on right now in his dead body. So if you think if it's just some kind of missing chemical, then put some chemical back in. Everybody knows there's tons and tons, thousands and tons of chemicals on this planet. Dow Chemical Company, there's thousands of different chemicals. So if life is nothing but chemicals, I like this point Prabhupada makes once. He says, if you think life is nothing but chemicals, then why don't we see a lump of mud or a stone giving birth to a child? Real nice point. Why don't you see a lump of stone or a piece of mud? That's all this body is. It's just earth, water, fire, air. Why don't you see these kind of things giving birth to a child? You won't. But this is the atheistic demoniac mentality. They think that life, there's a saying amongst high school kids, I think I was told, YOLO, you only live once, right? You hear this from these young kids because they have no information about anything. You only live once, right? So that's their idea. But our philosophy is life comes from life. And we can prove it. I came from my father. He came from his father. He came from his father. You go all the way back, you come to Krishna. Their philosophy is it's all just a lump of chemicals, but they can't prove it. Prabhupada gave this nice example once. He said he was talking to a devotee, Swarup Damodar, in California on a morning walk, and he was saying, so these scientists say they can produce life, and Sorb Dahmer was playing devil's advocate, and he was saying, yeah, they're on the verge. They're almost at this point where they can find what the missing chemical is that brings life back to the body. And Prabhu says, just like a chicken. The chicken will sit on an egg for a few days. After a while, the thing hatches, and you get a little chicken out of it. And he says, so what is an egg? It's just some cellulose, some yellow chemicals, and some white chemicals. They've got all these kind of chemicals. Just get some cellulose covering, put the yellow and white chemicals in it, incubate it, and then you'll get a chicken. No, you're not going to get a chicken. So Prabhupada says, therefore, the chicken's more intelligent than these foolish scientists. They can't produce life if they're promising all these different wonderful things that's going to come from their scientific advancement. So all these points that I mentioned, 5 or 6 different things, they're all a negative way to look at the soul. It's like Jnana Yoga. It's not this, it's not this. These people that engage in Jnana Yoga, they're trying to come to the essence of everything by negation. So it's the same kind of thing, these examples. I'm not this body. So if we're not this body, what is this consciousness? What is this thing that's speaking, this life form that's inside the body? Lord Chaitanya said, Gopi Bharata Parakamalaya Dasana Dasana Das. He says, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not a brahmachari, I'm not a householder. He says, I'm simply the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis of Krishna. That's who I am. And in Bhagavad Gita, I want to read a couple verses here. That's the negative side of it. What's the positive side of it? So in this same chapter that we're reading, Krishna says, for the soul, there's never birth nor death. There having once been, does he ever cease to be? He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, undying, primeval. He's not slain when the body is slain, as a person puts on new garments, giving old ones. Similarly, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old useless ones. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can it be burned by fire or moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. His individual soul is unbreakable, insoluble, can neither be burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, immutable, and unchangeable. So knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. So this is from the Supreme Authority, the Supreme Personality of Hare Krishna. He's explaining, this is the characteristics of the soul. So we're not this body. We're the living force within this body, the consciousness what animates this body, without which you got a dead body. So the problem is, if that's who we are, if we're not this body, if we're the living thing, whatever you want to call it, it's inside this body, then what's the problem? Well, the problem is, it's just like when a criminal goes to jail. You put him behind bars. Nobody wants to be in jail. Everybody hates it because the nature of the soul is to be free. So you put a person in jail and he's got these bars surrounding him and he wants to get out of this jail. So the jail cell is actually much easier to break out of than his body and bodily consciousness. So in Bhagavad Gita and also Bhagavatam explains there's 24 kinds of jail cells, 24 kinds of bars that hold us in this body. The first is the Mahabhut, earth, water, fire, air. So this lump of matter that we're living in, made out of earth, it's made out of water, made out of fire, made out of ether. Then the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, false ego. Then you have the 5 working senses, the legs, the hands, the voice, anus, genitals. Then you have the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the eyes, ears, nose, touch, like that. And then the objects of the senses, sense, smell, warmth, like that. So add them all up together. You've got 24 different kinds of bars that are holding in this material body. And yet everybody's thinking, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. So what's the solution? So I pulled this one verse from Bhagavatam. It has a lot of nice purports. And as far as we're concerned, this is the solution coming from the Bhagavatam. It's Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.24. Even if one chants the holy name of the Lord with improper pronunciation, he will achieve relief from material bondage if he chants without offenses. In the purport, Prabhupada says, Ajamil, for example, was extremely sinful, but while dying, he merely chanted the holy name, and although calling his son, he achieved complete liberation because he remembered the name of Narayan. In the assembly of Raghunath Das Goswami's father, Haridas Thakur confirmed that simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one is liberated, even if he does not chant completely inoffensively. If one chants the holy name of the Lord with great devotion in the evening and in the morning, one can become free from all material miseries. Another quotation confirms that one can achieve liberation if one hears the holy name of the Lord constantly, every day with great respect. This is all in the same purport. It's all about chanting. Sridhar Swami also quotes from the Puranas, Papa Shayas Chabhavati Smaratam Tam Ahor Nisham. One can become free from all sinful reactions simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Lord day and night. Furthermore, he quotes the Bhagavatam 6:331. That one's just a couple verses past the one I just read. All these quotations prove that one who constantly engages in chanting and hearing of the holy activities, name form of the Lord is liberated. As stated wonderfully in this verse, simply by uttering the name of the Lord, one is freed from all sinful reactions. The word alam, which is used in this verse, indicates that simply uttering the holy name of the Lord is sufficient. Even if one chants imperfectly, one becomes free from all sinful reactions by chanting. This power of chanting the holy name was proved by the liberation of the Jamil. When the Jamil chanted the holy name of Narayan, he did not precisely remember the Supreme Lord. Instead, he remembered his own son. Nevertheless, the Jamil received liberation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Therefore, what is to be said of those who are not sinful like a Jamil? It is to be concluded that with a strong vow, one should chant the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. For thus one will certainly be delivered from the clutches of Maya by the grace of Krishna. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is recommended even for persons who commit offenses, because if they continue chanting, they will gradually chant offenselessly. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also quotes this verse from Padma Purana. Even if in the beginning one chants the Hare Krishna mantra with offenses, one will become free from such offenses by chanting again and again. It was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted the following verse: in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. If the members of the Krishna Conscious Movement strictly follow this recommendation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their position will always be secure. So, we've given a short synopsis of what we're not, this material body. Give 5 or 6 examples, and then we explain the verses from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna explains the qualities, the characteristics of the soul, and then how to get free from this prison house that we're now living. And if we don't think we're living in a prison house, that's another prison that we're living in. And then the solution is Lord Chaitanya gave in his age: Harinam, 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 Evikavalam. Chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant it. There's no other way, there's no other way. There's no other way to be happy in this age but to chant Hare Krishna mantra. So Prabhupada concludes this in another. He says, so why is it that human beings have greater facility for economic development than the animals? Or why is it they have a greater sense of living in this material world? It's easier for us to live than animals or bugs. You know, if you go out in this yard and you take a rock and flip it over, you look underneath it, you look at it carefully, there's all this warfare going on with these insects and worms and bugs. They're all eating each other, and it's horrible. And then you go up to the higher species, it's the same thing. You know, when the animals die around here, sometimes you see on the road something will be dead. So a car will hit it, and then the vultures will come, and the coyotes will come and take it away. So this is the material world. So the reason this facility, why is it that humans have greater facility for economic things in material living? It's because we have a greater responsibility. The animals don't have this responsibility. They can't understand anything. All they can understand is, it's like the cows every day. Sometimes when it's raining, these cows are just sitting out there and it's pouring rain out. So Prabhupada gave this example once. He was walking someplace as a young man in India, and he saw these 2 goats. One goat was tied up, just sitting there eating the grass, and another goat was getting slaughtered. And the goat that was eating the grass, he's just oblivious to what's coming next. So Prabhupada says, so if a human being was in this situation, if you're tied up, staked up to the ground, and you see, you know, all your other brothers are get shot or killed, you're going to try to run away or fight because you want to survive. You don't want to take this without a fight. You're not going to just lay over dead. So he mentions, he says, so when we come into this human form of life, and if we don't take advantage of this human form of life, then we're knowingly committing suicide. Knowingly. Just like on a cigarette packs, the Surgeon General of the United States says, smoking cigarettes can cause cancer. So these people, they're taking this nicotine, and they're thinking, nothing's going to happen, but they're killing themselves. They're knowingly taking poison. So it's the same thing. When we come into this human form of life, if we fail to take advantage of this human form, then we're knowingly committing suicide. There's a verse, I wanted to end this here. I was just reading this in Bhagavatam. It says, this is 4:22-32. There's no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest in thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. And Prabhupada says, human life is especially meant for self-realization. Anything performed contrary to this principle is certainly against one's self-interest. In another place he says that our greatest problem is ourself. We're our own worst enemy. Because the process is there, the formula is there, the medicine's there, the diet is there, and if we don't take it, then we're knowingly committing suicide. So it's not a difficult thing to understand, but most people can't understand it. I was thinking about it, all these devotees, nice devotees that come today. Some come from, a couple thousand miles away, some come from 100 or 200 miles away. And it reminded me of this verse, Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagavan Jiya Guru Kripaya Paya Bhakti Lada Beach, Krishna people. That we've been wandering in this universe. And Chaitanya Charya says, we've been wandering millions of lifetimes. Sometimes it's demigods, sometimes it's humans, sometimes it's insects, worms. But one who's fortunate, he comes to the human form of life and he gets the opportunity to meet a bona fide spiritual master and cultivate the Bhakti Rana Beach, which is the only way out of this prison house. You can take the karma, you can take the jnana, you can do all these karma kandiya activities, and those things are pious and they'll give you a different situation. You may go to the heavenly planets, but the problem is not going to be solved. The problem is this body. And since time immemorial, it's not just us. Up in the heavenly planets, these demigods are also thinking they're this body. They may have this knowledge, but they're still acting for sense gratification. Even great yogis and sages, same thing. So this is the pivotal point to get out of this material world, to understand. This is the first thing, the first lesson, right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. First chapter is just introducing the players. Second chapter is like, okay, now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. You're not this body, Arjuna. So he's saying, while speaking learned words, you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise and lament neither for the living nor the dead. So when we actually come to the spiritual platform, then this lamentation, this hankering, it'll be gone. Later on in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasochati Nakanshati Samak Sarvashi Bhuti Shimad Bhakti Nobate. This is a person who's liberated. No conditions. He's always happy, he's always joyful. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. That means joyful. And what's the characteristic? Nasochati Nakanshati. He doesn't hanker, doesn't lament, just like Arjuna's doing here. He's lamenting. I'm in this situation. I want out of it. It's a condition. When we can exist without conditions, that means we're liberated. So these are the two conditions that Krishna gives. He doesn't hanker, doesn't lament, and samar bhutishu bhakta madhate param, when you're equal to all living beings. Then, from that position, then we engage in devotional service. That's the spiritual platform. Then we're liberated. So this is possible. Actually, I wanted to read something. I was just reading this morning. Wrap this up here. About, it may seem unattainable, but it is attainable. And if we keep chanting, as I was reading some of these points probably made in this one purport, that even if we chant offensively, you get free of these offenses by continuing to chant. Sometimes devotees, they don't want to take the deity worship because they're afraid of making offenses. If that's true, then don't even chant, because you're making offenses chanting. But the process is, even in deity worship, if you make some offense, you make a mistake, you just re-engage in the service and Krishna forgives you. Because we're just like children. A kid tries to walk, he gets up, falls down, but his propensity is to get up and walk. That's his real business, is to walk, not to stay fallen. And he's not going to be happy just crawling on the floor. He wants to walk. So our position is to become liberated. It's like the example I gave about remembering yesterday and wanting to jump and play like a child. That's or not to work. Prabhupada mentions another place, he says, the desire not to work is a spiritual desire. Because in spiritual world, everything is given to you. It's by the internal energy of Krishna. It's all provided. Nobody works. It's all play. Nobody punches the clock. Nobody drives on that crazy freeway. And because it's all driven, it's all run by the internal energy of Krishna, which takes care of everything. And it's not that there's no independence. So anyway, there's a couple of things that Prabhupada mentioned. This was a paper that I put together some years ago. DeSoto sent this out, and I was reading it, and I printed it out. I forgot I can put this thing out. He's saying this is I just highlighted it's the characteristics when we become a liberated soul. So we might think it's unattainable, but when you're shooting for something, you should be looking at the goal, not all the problems along the way. As long as you keep your mind on the goal, all these problems are going to fall away in due course of time. But if you get sidestepped and start thinking about this problem, that problem, you lost sight of the goal. Like Prabhu mentioned one place, it says, if you're not thinking about getting out of this material world, then you're making plans to stay here. And that means you're still trapped. So these points, he says, these are all different quotes from the books. He's saying that generally ever liberated personalities live in the spiritual world as associates of Lord Krishna, and they are known as Krishna Parishad, associates of the Lord. Their only business is to join Lord Krishna's company, even though such eternally liberated persons come within the material world and serve the Lord's purpose. They enjoy Lord Krishna's company without stoppage. They do not feel the contamination of material miseries, nor does he feel any contact with the material elements. His so-called body, material body, does not exist, being surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest. Thus he is permanently freed from all contaminations of the sum total of Mahatattva, by being transcendental to the sevenfold material coverings by the effects of his devotional service. The specific qualification for becoming the representative of the Lord is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. A person who is able, I'm just skipping through and picking these highlights. A person who is able to attain this transcendental qualification is called Jiva Mukta, liberated, even though he's apparently in the material condition. They do not become influenced by the material qualities. Similarly, any living entity who is conditioned can achieve the perfectional stage of life by the above-mentioned processes, and the vivid example is Narada Muni. So it may seem unattainable, and it is difficult. There's no quibbling about it. It is difficult, but it's the only thing that we should be doing. That's our business. That's our real business in the human form of life. The animals eat, sleep, mate, and defend. We still do that to some degree, but unless this thing is there about trying to become free from the three modes of material nature through the blessings of the spiritual master, then we're just going to keep coming back lifetime after lifetime. So the essence of all this, the purport of all this is keep chanting Hare Krishna. And eventually it's going to happen. Sometime. This lifetime, next lifetime, sometime. So I was thinking, I was mentioning I didn't go through the rest of this point about how all of you from all different places, and I'm feeling really fortunate to have all you here, because how often does this take place when you get all these nice devotees at one place at one time and you get together and chant Hare Krishna? So in the same way, Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagavan Jeev, we've been wandering all over this universe thousands and thousands of lifetimes. This is just one lifetime, but now we're here, we're performing the Yuga Dharma, and we're taking this process seriously, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. So we have to continue associating with devotees and keep following this process, and eventually, when Krishna's pleased, the spiritual master is pleased with us, we'll become liberated and we'll go back to Godhead. So if any questions or comments on some of these points? Anu?
I just think it's a real nice example when you were over at our place, especially when you were describing, I never heard how just reading how sinful Ajamil was. He was killing people, and it was just so sinful. We may think the word tickled him some things, but he was tickled in the worst sinful activities, and still just by, chanting the name of Narayan for his son. I just think it's a great example of just how powerful the holy name is.
There's three kinds of chanting. One is called Shuddhanam, which is pure chanting, and then Namabas, and then Namaparad. So he chanted in Namabas, which is almost pure. He didn't chant with any offense. He didn't know. But still, he got the benefit of chanting Narayan's name. So that's how powerful this holy name is. And Prabhupada, I think somebody said this before, I've never heard him say it, but he said, Prabhupada once said that if you actually knew how powerful this mantra was, you'd be afraid to chant it. And I think that's probably true. When you read about these great souls and their hairs are standing on end, and they forget all about eating and sleeping, everything. That's all they want to do is chant day and night. So the symptom of advancement is how much we become addicted to this process of chanting. Not how many slokas we know, not how well you can offer arti, sing a song or lead none of that. That's all good. But the real test is how we're becoming addicted to this chanting, how much we want to chant. So in the beginning, it's called Nirbija Yoga, which is lifeless yoga. You do it out of obedience to the spiritual master, but then gradually you get a taste. And I was just reading this morning. I was having breakfast for Shah. There's 9 processes of bhakti. The first 7 are for the neophytes, and then the last 2, when you become Sakyam Atman Nivedana, you become friends with Krishna and surrender everything to Krishna. That's for the Raga Nuga Bhaktis. They have already this taste for Krishna. They're on the transcendental platform. They don't have to chant, they want to chant. But they're not forced to be made to chant. They want to chant this name of Krishna. Who was the saying that how much nectar is contained within these 2 syllables of Krishna? I wish I had thousands and thousands of ears and tongues to chant. Yeah. So it might seem like some kind of myth, but if you look at this practically in your own life, what have you been able to do for this long and not get tired of it? You know, say you have a karmi name, you say your name over and over again. After about 5 minutes, your head goes crazy. You can't even, why am I even saying this? You can chant Krishna's name over and over again and not get tired of it. Or you might get a little tired of it, but then you come back to it. So this is the test, how much we're advanced and how much we want to associate with Krishna's devotees. It's a process. Adau Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Vritti Syat. If we want to get rid of these prison bars, these 24 gross and subtle bars that are covering ourselves, then the first thing is Shraddha. You get Shraddha by hearing from the spiritual master, then Adau Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, then you want the association of devotees constantly. You can't get enough of it. And then as a result of wanting this association, then you can do this bhajana kriya properly. And then when you do this bhajana kriya properly, then what's the result? All the anarthas go away. And then you get this ruchi, this taste, and nishta, firm faith. And there's no turning back at that point, unless you're making some offenses, which is still possible. But if we're careful and we follow this process and hear from Prabhupada, then the result's going to be there. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Payojita Gyanayati Yamasa Gyanam Charaitikam. By rendering devotional service, one need acquires causeless knowledge and detachment. Both of these have to be there. You gonna say anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to say, you were saying how Prabhupada said if you know how powerful this holy name was, you want to chant. You once gave another example. You knew that you once knew this doctor. He knew how to leave his body and go to other places and heal people and stuff. He just knew how to soul travel. Right. But he tried to chant a mantra, and he actually said this person who knew how to do this kind of stuff, he was actually saying that this mantra is just too powerful. Instead of chanting, I can't keep on chanting because he can experience that it was just really powerful. He just couldn't keep, he didn't want to do it anymore.
It's very.
I think that's a nice
also
example.
Makes difference, when you're being raised, in a Vaishnava family. That makes difference than just knowing Krishna when you're just regular, person.
It helps, but it's not a disqualification. It definitely helps, because that's the result of pious activity. You get born in a nice family.
Right, but not straight.
But it's not an impediment, because most of us weren't born in Brahmin Vaishnava families. Yet we met Prabhupada, and by his mercy that we're still here, keep chanting. So we must be doing something right. The Prabhupada used to say, don't be surprised who comes, be surprised who stays. Because the mind is so flickering. The mind is always dragging us here, dragging us there. There's one purport in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it's 6th chapter, Prabhupada says, everything depends on the practical performance of one's duties in an attempt to control the mind and senses and conquer over anger and lust. Everything depends on the practical performance of one's duties to control these mind and senses. So it's a great science. It's a great process. And I've never gotten tired of it ever since I started chanting. I never stopped chanting.
I have a question.
Okay.
So you said that to want to not work is a spiritual quality, but Krishna tells Arjuna that he works so that we understand that we have to work. He works as an example to us, not because he has to work, because he doesn't have to do anything. So how do you reconcile those two?
Because Arjuna has a material body. this is something I just found out recently. Arjun and what's his mother? What was it?
Arjun's mother.
David Kunti. Right. So Prabhupada meant this was a really eye opener for me because he was saying that Arjun never leaves the material world. He goes wherever Krishna goes and has these pastimes, explaining Bhagavad Gita. But at the same, he's got a material body, but his body is surcharged with spiritual energy. So, but he's teaching us that we have, the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, you got karma yoga, how to dovetail all your material activities with Krishna's desire. So that's the beginning. First you understand you're not the body, then you understand, okay, if I'm not the body, but I still have this body, what do I have to do with this body? So the beginning is karma yoga. So it's a long ways from karma yoga to jnana yoga up to bhakti yoga, and then you become a liberated soul when you have a spiritual body. Then you don't have to do anything. There is no work required. But to get to that point, we have to work. As Prabhu used to say, work now, samadhi later. Don't think that you can just sit down and chant and then you're going to be like Haridas Thakur. So we have to work. But the desire, the innate quality of the soul is that it doesn't want to work because everything comes from Krishna. And everything he gets is from Krishna. Did I answer your question?
So Krishna works so we can see that our innate desires are not necessarily what we're supposed to do.
In this condition state, we don't know what our innate desire is. We're thinking we know, but we actually don't. You got some other thing you want to agitate me with?
Well, there's a couple things.
Okay, here we go.
One is Krishna says, Nahi kashchit chanamapi,
Yeah.
that all people, all living entities are forced to act according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature.
Right.
Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something. So that's one point. The other point is, in the spiritual world, everybody wants to serve. It's not work. It's love. It's a, it's a loving offering. Yeah. It's a sanctament, or how do you say sanctum? Whatever that word is.
Inclination.
Yeah, like you do it because you're in love, and when you're in love with somebody, you want to do service for them. You want to be with them. You want to cook dinner for them. You want to do things for them. So it's not like you're sitting. That's kind of like, and to me, in my looking at it, it's more like if you want to extinguish work. If you look at that as the goal, then that's more like a jnani type of, like almost like a, we looking at work it causes us so much, the reactions cause us so much misery. But if we're engaged in devotional service, the reactions are all good.
These things Prabhupada's mentioned, a number of these things. He says like to jump and play and have fun, not to work. These are all the activities with the coward boys and the goat. This is what they're doing all the time. But at the same time, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, work done as a sacrifice of Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds into this material world. So as long as you got a material body, it has to work. He mentions even a sannyasi who's renounced, he still has to work to put some food in his mouth so he can eat. So you can't have a position of not working in the material world with a material body. It's only when you have a spiritual body that this whole business of going through all these procedures of having to work and doing work properly without attachment results comes into question.
I also think that being forced to act is not the same as being forced to work. Your action isn't necessarily work. Your action could be sleeping or breathing.
Can you ready to add anything? Ram Raghava, what do you think?
Nice discussion.
I was going to add in one more thing. And sometimes when devotees chant, whether they're chanting the verses or whether they're chanting their japa, it's kind of like they're in a big hurry. It's kind of like, well, I gotta finish my rounds so I can watch Dexter or something. I don't know what it is, but there's this like, and sometimes I think lately, like, what's the big hurry? it's nice to just sink into it and allow, kind of not be and step out of that mode of passion and be a little bit more in the mode of goodness and see it from that perspective, or do it from that perspective. I'd like to invite
there's different stages.
devotees to that.
Prabhu explains what he was chanting. There's the first stage is the offensive stage. Then you got the clearing stage. Then you got the offenseless stage. So that all involves work. It's not that it's going to happen. We're not going to get to the last stage without work. And the work is meant to please the spiritual master, because I think I was mentioning this to somebody. It was some conversation I was having about. Well, I think you asked me something in an email, and I said we can't do anything without even cleaning the stoolroom without the Guru's permission. What was your question? Do you remember what the question was? He asked me, should we have? There was something I can't remember what the first part of it was, but the answer was, and it was to make the point that we're not independent as a disciple of a bona fide Guru. You can't do anything. You can't turn right or left without the Guru's permission. Just like the Guru's supposed to, if he doesn't call you for meals, you fast. That's how it's supposed to be. But how many disciples think like that? Prabhupada explains that there's different kinds of disciples. The first class disciple anticipates the desire of the Guru, and he does it without even being asked. He's so much in union with the mindset of the Guru. Second class disciple, he has to be asked, and then he does it. Third class disciple, he's asked and he still doesn't do it. So these are different kinds of devotees that we should become so in tune with Prabhupada's desires. I mean, he's told us what he wants. We know what he wants. Unless you're brain dead, you have to know what he wants. So we should anticipate what he wants before he asks us. And then if he asks us, it might be directly, or it might be in a dream, or it might be through some other devotee. Then our business is to fulfill that desire. In Sanskrit, it's called chidvilas. That the innate characteristic of the soul is called chidvilas. It means to give spiritual pleasure. That's our business. That's our work, if you want to call it. That's what the soul's business is to please the Supreme Being. So not just pleasing Krishna directly, but the way to please Krishna in this age, probably mentions in a purport that you like, is that you feed the devotees prasadam and you engage in kirtan. That's the easiest way to make advancement in Kali Yuga. You feed them prasadam and have kirtan. So on that note, when we do one more kirtan, we can invite prasadam.
Is there a chance for a question?
Okay.
I have a quick question about Vani and the Vapu. We understand that the body of the spiritual master is indeed spiritual, but at the same time, Prabhupada mentions, right, that the Vapu is not always appreciated, right, in the conclusion to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Why would you say it is so? Why it is not always appreciated, the Vapu?
Because it's not here. The physical body's gone. Before when Prabhupada was here, then physically here, then you could ask him so many things. Now we have to get instruction from his instructions. Mm-hmm. So it is a physical body. The physical body is past. Yeah. That's another whole story we don't want to get into.
Well, we could discuss it outside while we're enjoying
Yeah,
prasadam.
let's have kirtan.
Oh, okay.
One more kirtan, we go up beside him.